In 1872, the crew of the Digressia spotted something strange on the horizon. As they drew closer, they realized it was the Mary Celeste, a merchant vessel they'd seen leaving New York Harbor just 8 days earlier. But something was terribly wrong. The ship was drifting aimlessly, its sails partially set but tattered. When they boarded to offer assistance, they found a ghost ship. The cargo was intact. The crew's belongings were still there. Half-eaten food sat on plates in the galley. 6 months' worth of food and water were still stored. The only lifeboat was missing. But most chilling of all, in the captain's cabin, they found what appeared to be a half-finished log entry, the ink's still wet on the page. 10 people, including the captain's wife and young daughter, had vanished into thin air. The Mary Celeste would become the most famous ghost ship in history, but was far from the only one. The mystery of the Mary Celeste launched a maritime legend, but ghost ships have haunted our oceans for centuries. In 1750, a Dutch merchant ship discovered the Octavius drifting near Greenland. When they boarded, they found the entire crew frozen solid, the captain still at his desk, pen in hand. Based on the logbook, the Octavius had been floating dead in the Arctic for 13 years. The Carol A. Deering washed up on North Carolina's shores in 1921. The schooner's sails were set, and the crew's belongings were in place. Breakfast was laid out in the galley, still warm. But not a soul was aboard. The investigation found something more disturbing. All the ship's navigational equipment and logbooks had vanished, along with the crew. In 1947, the Ourang Medan sent out a chilling distress call. All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chartroom and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. When rescuers reached the ship hours later, they found the entire crew dead, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror, with no signs of injury or struggle. Before they could investigate further, the ship mysteriously caught fire and sank. Modern ghost ships tell equally haunting tales. The Jian Seng was found drifting off Australia's coast in 2006, its engines dead, but its hull intact. In 2013, the Lyubov Orlova, a former cruise ship, broke free while being towed and disappeared into the North Atlantic. Experts believed it had sunk until it was spotted drifting toward Ireland months later, only to vanish again. But what could cause entire crews to vanish without a trace? Some cases have rational explanations: pirates, mutinies, or insurance fraud. The crew might abandon ship during severe storms, only for the vessel to survive while they perish. Natural phenomena like methane gas bubbles from the ocean floor could suffocate a crew in minutes. Yet many cases defy explanation. Ships found with valuable cargo intact rule out piracy. Vessels discovered in calm seas with no signs of damage challenge theories of natural disasters. Personal belongings left behind, meals half-eaten, and log entries cut off mid-sentence suggest the crews faced something that made them flee in terror or vanish in an instant. What's even more disturbing is how modern technology hasn't prevented these incidents. Despite GPS tracking, satellite communications, and advanced weather forecasting, ships still disappear. Sometimes they resurface years later, transformed by the sea into floating tombs. Other times, they vanish forever, leaving us to wonder what horrors their crews faced in their final moments. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect isn't the ghost ships themselves. It's the perfect storms that create them. These aren't just any storms. They're maritime monsters that can turn the most advanced vessels into floating coffins. The patterns in these ghost ship cases are eerily similar. Many are found with their crew's belongings undisturbed, suggesting no planned evacuation. Valuable cargo remains untouched. Navigation equipment often vanishes along with the crew. And perhaps most chilling, many are discovered with signs of recent human activity, as if the crew simply evaporated mid-task. The SS Valencia provides another disturbing example. After sinking off Vancouver Island in 1906, locals reported seeing a ghostly ship matching its description for years afterward. In 1910, a lifeboat from the Valencia was found floating in remarkably good condition, despite having been lost at sea for 4 years. The sealed compartments were still watertight, and the paint looked fresh, as if it had been maintained by an invisible crew. The High Aim 6 appeared off Australia in 2003, its engine still running and its fuel tanks half full. Investigation revealed the crew had abandoned the perfectly functional vessel months earlier. Only the captain and engineer were ever found. One dead under suspicious circumstances, the other claiming the crew fled in terror but refusing to explain why. These modern cases are particularly baffling because they occurred in an age of constant communication and surveillance. The Kazaview, dubbed the Ghost Yacht, was found drifting off Australia's Great Barrier Reef in 2007. The engine was running, a laptop was switched on, and the table was set for dinner. But its three-man crew had vanished without a trace. The curse of ghost ships even extends to massive cargo vessels. The Joita disappeared in the South Pacific in 1955, carrying 25 passengers and crew. When found 5 weeks later, the vessel was partly submerged, but still afloat, thanks to its cork-lined hull. The crew was gone, along with the cargo, medical supplies, and emergency equipment. But most puzzling was the blood-stained bandages found on deck, with no other signs of violence or struggle. Scientists and investigators have proposed countless theories to explain these disappearances. Rogue waves, temporal anomalies, methane gas eruptions, and even extraterrestrial intervention have all been suggested. But none fully explain the combination of undisturbed vessels, missing crews, and the sense of sudden, inexplicable abandonment that characterizes true ghost ships. What we do know is that these haunting vessels continue to emerge from the mists, carrying their silent mysteries across the world's oceans. But to understand how modern ships can still vanish without a trace, we need to examine the devastating power of nature at its most furious. The Edmund Fitzgerald was one of the largest ships on the Great Lakes, a 729-foot freighter built to withstand anything nature could throw at her. But on November 10, 1975, she faced something unprecedented. A convergence of 3 storm systems that created waves over 3 stories high. The last message from her captain was chillingly calm. "We are holding our own." Minutes later, the Fitzgerald vanished with all 29 crew members. No distress signal, no time to react. The storm had created conditions so severe that a massive steel vessel simply ceased to exist in seconds. These perfect storms that spawn ghost ships aren't just about size. They're about timing. When multiple weather systems collide, they create what meteorologists call explosive cyclogenesis. Wave patterns become unpredictable. Winds can shift 180 degrees in minutes. The ocean itself seems to come alive, with rogue waves appearing out of nowhere to swallow ships whole. Modern vessels are equipped with sophisticated weather radar, satellite tracking, and emergency systems. But technology has a fatal flaw. It can't react fast enough to nature's fury. When 3 Japanese training vessels disappeared in 2020, their last satellite transmissions showed clear weather. Within 15 minutes, they were engulfed by waves that seemed to materialize from calm seas. The physics of these storms defy conventional understanding. When winds exceed 100 knots, they don't just push against a ship. They create a vacuum effect that can lift vessels out of the water. The SS Central America discovered this in 2014 when it encountered a microbursa, a powerful downdraft that hit with the force of multiple tornadoes. The ship's black box revealed the crew had only 47 seconds between detecting the threat and total catastrophe. These conditions create the perfect recipe for ghost ships. A crew might abandon ship in panic, only to have their vessel survive while their lifeboat is lost. Or worse, they might face what sailors call white water events, where air mixes with water to create a liquid that can't support a ship's weight. The vessel simply drops into a void in the ocean, as if falling through a trapdoor. The MV Derbyshire's fate illustrates this terrifying phenomenon. The largest British ship ever lost at sea, she disappeared in 1980 during Typhoon Orchid. When her wreckage was finally found 14 years later, investigators discovered something disturbing. The massive vessel hadn't been overwhelmed by waves from above. Instead, the sea had opened beneath her, causing the ship to plunge into a temporary abyss created by the storm. The true horror of these perfect storms isn't just their power, it's their ability to erase any trace of what happened. Ships caught in these maelstroms often vanish so completely that even modern search technology can't find them. The ocean floor around major shipping routes is littered with vessels that disappeared during seemingly normal weather, only to be found years later in locations that defy explanation. But perhaps most chilling are the ships that survive these encounters, transformed into drifting tombs that carry evidence of their crew's final moments. These ghost ships emerge from storms with their navigation equipment still functioning, their cargo intact, and no sign of what compelled their crew to vanish into the merciless sea. The Bermuda Triangle offers a prime example of how these perfect storms create ghost ships. While many dismiss the area's reputation as mere legend, meteorologists have discovered a frightening truth. The region experiences unique weather phenomena called air bombs. These microbursts can generate winds exceeding 170 miles per hour and waves higher than the tallest buildings, all within minutes. The SSL Faro's tragic end in 2015 revealed how even the most experienced crews can be blindsided by these conditions. Despite having access to advanced weather forecasting, satellite communications, and state-of-the-art navigation systems, the massive cargo ship sailed directly into Hurricane Joaquin. The investigation found that the storm's unusual behavior had created a deadly trap. By the time the crew realized the danger, every escape route was blocked by walls of water. What makes these storms particularly lethal is their ability to create ghost conditions, moments when standard safety procedures actually increase danger. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority documented cases where ships following proper storm protocols found themselves in worse jeopardy. Turning into waves for stability can expose vessels to sudden wind shifts. Reducing speed for safety can leave ships vulnerable to being overwhelmed from behind. The case of the Flying Dutchman in 2019 demonstrates this paradox. The modern cargo vessel encountered what appeared to be moderate storm conditions near the Cape of Good Hope. Following standard procedures, the crew reduced speed and adjusted course. But weather radar showed something unprecedented. 3 separate storm systems were converging to create what meteorologists now call a triangle trap. The ship's last automated message reported wave heights of 95 feet, far beyond its design tolerance. These perfect storms don't just threaten vessels on the surface. Submarines have reported equally disturbing phenomena during severe weather events. Deep pressure changes can create underwater currents strong enough to snap steel cables. The ocean itself becomes stratified, with layers of water moving at different speeds and directions, like a giant underwater shredder. But perhaps most unsettling is what these storms leave behind. When rescue teams finally reach storm-affected areas, they often find ships that seem to have been abandoned in calm conditions. Meals still on tables, equipment functioning normally, and no signs of the panic you'd expect during a catastrophic weather event. It's as if the crews encountered something even more terrifying than the storm itself. For those studying maritime disappearances, these perfect storms represent more than just weather events. They're windows into the ocean's ability to create conditions beyond human comprehension. And while modern technology has made shipping safer, it has also revealed disturbing patterns in how vessels vanish. But the storms that create ghost ships are only part of the story. The real mystery begins when these abandoned vessels are found. These storms create another phenomenon that defies scientific explanation: the white squall. Unlike normal storms that build gradually, white squalls appear instantly from clear skies. The Pride of Baltimore fell victim to one in 1986. Within 30 seconds, the vessel went from sailing in calm waters to battling 80-knot winds and massive waves. Only 4 of the 12 crews survived, and they reported something haunting. Moments before the squall hit, the ocean had gone completely silent. Modern weather satellites have captured these events forming, revealing a terrifying pattern. The storms don't just move across the ocean. They seem to materialize directly over ships, as if drawn to them. The Meteorological Society of Japan documented 27 cases between 2010 and 2020 where vessels encountered severe weather systems that appeared to track their movements. The commercial shipping industry loses an average of 50 vessels each year to severe weather. But the truly disturbing statistic is this. In 40% of these cases, the ships vanish without sending distress signals. Whatever they encounter strikes so quickly that even modern emergency systems can't respond fast enough. Yet it's what happens after these storms that truly haunts maritime investigators. Ships that survive often report inexplicable equipment failures, with navigation systems showing impossible positions or time discrepancies. Some vessels emerge with their clocks stopped at the exact same moment, despite being hundreds of miles apart. When a ship disappears, an invisible clock starts ticking. The International Maritime Organization sets strict protocols. After 48 hours without contact, a vessel is officially considered missing. But for search and rescue teams, these first hours reveal something chilling. Modern ships equipped with multiple backup systems don't just vanish. Something has to make them disappear. The US Cyclops case exemplifies this haunting reality. In 1918, the massive cargo ship vanished with 309 crew members somewhere between Barbados and the Chesapeake Bay. No wreckage, no bodies, no distress call. The search covered over 350,000 square miles and found nothing. The US Navy's final report contained a single disturbing line. The disappearance of this ship has been one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Navy. Modern search operations reveal even more disturbing patterns. When the El Faro disappeared in 2015, investigators found its final resting place. But the discovery raised more questions than answers. The ship's position was miles from its last reported location, in an area it couldn't have reached given its speed and heading. The bridge voice recorder revealed something unsettling. In their final moments, the crew was calmly discussing routine matters. Whatever doomed them came without warning. The psychological impact on families of lost crews creates another layer of tragedy. Unlike other disasters, maritime disappearances offer no closure. Years can pass before wreckage appears, if ever. The Malaysian Transport Ministry maintains files on over 100 vessels that have vanished since 2000. Each case contains letters from families, still searching for answers decades later. Search teams face their own psychological burden. Captain Sarah Chen, who led the search for the Gulf Livestock One in 2020, describes the peculiar horror of modern maritime searches. We have all this technology, satellite tracking, underwater drones, sonar mapping. But sometimes ships just vanish as if they never existed. It's like they sail off the edge of reality. The truth is, our oceans are still largely unexplored. The average depth of the Pacific is over 13,000 feet. Deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Current technology can only search a fraction of these depths effectively. When ships sink in deep ocean trenches, they enter a world we barely understand. But modern investigations have revealed something even more unsettling. NOAA's database of ship disappearances shows clusters, areas where vessels vanish more frequently. These zones of silence appear and disappear, moving across oceans like invisible predators. Scientists have no explanation for why certain regions seem to swallow ships whole. The case of the Blessing Way demonstrates this phenomenon. The cargo vessel disappeared in 2018 in a well-traveled shipping lane. 3 months later, another ship vanished in the exact same location. When investigators mapped the ocean floor, they found nothing. No wreckage, no debris field, just an empty expanse of seafloor that looked as if it had been swept clean. Some investigators believe these disappearances connect to an even more terrifying phenomenon: ghost ships that suddenly reappear years after vanishing. Maritime investigators have developed new methods to trace missing vessels, using everything from satellite technology to underwater autonomous vehicles. But the deeper they look, the stranger the evidence becomes. In 2016, the search for a missing yacht off the coast of Australia revealed something unexpected. The vessel's emergency beacon activated at a depth impossible for the device to function. The official procedures for declaring a ship lost read like a guide to accepting the impossible. After exhausting all such options, investigators must consider factors that defy conventional explanation. Reports from nearby vessels often describe anomalous weather patterns, equipment malfunctions, and inexplicable compass readings in areas where ships vanish. For Captain Chen's team, the Gulf Livestock 1 search revealed another disturbing trend. Ships are disappearing in ways that shouldn't be possible with modern safety equipment. Multiple emergency backup systems fail simultaneously. Satellite trackers stop transmitting at exactly the same moment communications go dark. It's as if something is systematically isolating these vessels before they vanish. The human cost of these disappearances extends far beyond the missing crews. Maritime psychologist Dr. James Morton has documented what he calls the echo effect, how these incidents ripple through the shipping industry. When a ship vanishes without trace, he explains, it changes how every sailor views the sea. They know that no matter how advanced their vessel, no matter how experienced their crew, they could sail into something that makes them vanish completely. Some families of missing crews report strange phenomena of their own. Personal items belonging to lost sailors appearing miles inland. Phone calls from numbers matching the missing ship's satellite phones, years after they disappeared. Messages in bottles washing ashore with dates that don't match known disappearances. But perhaps most chilling are the ships that reappear, empty, adrift, and carrying evidence of their crew's final moments. These ghost ships pose a new kind of mystery, one that challenges our understanding of not just how vessels vanish, but what happens to them in the vast, dark depths of our oceans. The International Maritime Bureau maintains a database of these vanished vessels. But what isn't public is their unexplained phenomena files. These contain thousands of incident reports that defy conventional explanation. Ship's logs documenting compass needles spinning wildly in calm seas. Radar screens showing phantom vessels that appear and disappear. Radio transmissions picking up distress calls from ships that vanished decades ago. The advent of black box technology was supposed to solve these maritime mysteries. Instead, it has revealed more disturbing patterns. In multiple cases where ships later vanished, their data recorders showed impossible readings in the hours before disappearance. Water depths that change dramatically in stable areas, air pressure fluctuations that violate known physics, and temperature drops that would flash freeze seawater. Most recently, the investigation into the Tamaya 1's disappearance in 2016 unveiled something unprecedented. Satellite imagery showed the vessel seemingly fade from view over several hours, not in stormy conditions but in clear weather. When found 2 months later, its hull was intact, its cargo untouched, but its crew had vanished without a trace. These cases have led to the formation of specialized search and rescue units trained to deal with what they call anomalous maritime events. Their equipment includes devices to measure electromagnetic disturbances, underwater sound anomalies, and what one investigator cryptically refers to as temporal inconsistencies. But for all our technology and specialized training, ships continue to vanish. And sometimes, years or even decades later, they return as ghost ships, silent witnesses to whatever fate befell their crews. For maritime investigators, these cases present an impossible challenge. The vastness of our oceans means that even with modern technology, searching for missing vessels is like looking for a needle in a moving haystack. The Pacific Ocean alone covers 63 million square miles, with an average depth that could swallow Mount Everest. Technology that seems foolproof in port proves surprisingly fragile at sea. EPRB emergency beacons fail. Satellite tracking systems go dark. Multiple layers of redundant safety equipment somehow fail simultaneously. It's as if the ocean itself conspires to erase all trace of these vessels. The most recent development in maritime search and rescue, the use of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, has revealed another disturbing fact. When mapping areas where ships have vanished, these drones sometimes discover their own technology can't be trusted. Sonar readings show impossible structures. Depth measurements fluctuate wildly, and in several cases, the AUVs themselves have vanished while searching for missing ships. But sometimes the ocean gives up its secrets, and when ghost ships emerge from the depths years later, they bring with them evidence of fates perhaps worse than simply vanishing. In February 2016, residents of Seal Beach, California spotted something emerging from the morning fog. The Lyubov Orlova, a 4,250-ton cruise ship drifted silently toward shore, empty, abandoned, its hull covered in years of marine growth. The vessel had vanished while being towed from Canada to the Dominican Republic 3 years earlier. But its reappearance created a new mystery. How had it crossed the Panama Canal without being spotted? And where was the crew that must have guided it through? The phenomenon of ghost ships returning from the dead isn't new, but modern cases are particularly disturbing. The Ryuan Maru, a Japanese fishing vessel torn loose by the 2011 tsunami, appeared off the coast of Alaska 12 months later. When Coast Guard officers boarded, they found the ship's systems still functioning. The calendar in the captain's cabin was turned to March 2011, the month it disappeared. These floating tombs create serious environmental hazards. Without crews to maintain them, their fuel tanks eventually rupture. Their cargo holds flood, releasing chemicals into the ocean. But most dangerous are their phantom movements. Ghost ships don't show up on modern radar systems properly, making them near invisible threats to other vessels. When the Marlborough disappeared in 1890, it was considered lost forever. 23 years later, it was found drifting off the coast of Chai. The ship's log contained entries dated years after its disappearance. More disturbing still, local fishermen reported seeing lights and movement aboard the vessel for years before its discovery. The High Aim 6 raised even more questions when it was found in 2003. The Taiwanese fishing vessel was in perfect working order, its engines still running, fuel tanks half full. But its entire crew had vanished. The only clue was a half-completed log entry that ended mid-sentence. Modern ghost ships tell even stranger tales. In 2006, the tanker Jian Seng appeared off Australia's coast. Its name had been painted over, its registration numbers filed off. The only identifying marks were Chinese characters indicating it was a dead ship, maritime slang for a vessel being towed to the scrapyard. But no tugboat had reported losing it, and its fuel tanks contained an unidentified substance that didn't match any known maritime fuel. These wandering vessels create a unique problem for maritime authorities. International law requires them to prevent these ships from becoming navigation hazards, but boarding them is dangerous. Ghost ships often develop structural problems that make them floating death traps. Their dark corridors and rusted chambers hide deadly pockets of toxic gas, weakened floors, and other hazards that have claimed the lives of salvage crews. The Time Math Electron story particularly haunts maritime investigators. Found adrift in 1969, it contained only a logbook with increasingly disturbing entries. The final page described visitors coming aboard at night, despite the ship being hundreds of miles from the nearest vessel. When found, its chronometer was still running, but showed a date 3 weeks ahead of its actual discovery. The frequency of ghost ship appearances has increased in recent years. The International Maritime Organization documented 158 cases between 2000 and 2020, more than the previous 50 years combined. Some experts suggest this indicates a deeper mystery lurking in our oceans, one that's claiming vessels with frightening regularity. The true horror may not be in the ships we find, but in the growing number that vanish without a trace, perhaps destined to emerge years later with their own terrifying tales. The ocean holds many secrets, but none more chilling than these silent vessels that drift at its mercy. And while some ghost ships eventually reveal their mysteries, others continue to guard theirs, leaving us to wonder what untold horrors still lurk in the unexplored depths of our seas. The SF Valencia still haunts the waters off Vancouver Island. Over a century after sinking in 1906, hikers and boat crews report glimpses of a phantom ship matching its description. In 2005, divers investigating the reports found something inexplicable. Parts of the wreck had moved against prevailing currents, as if the ship was slowly crawling along the seafloor. Modern technology has only deepened these maritime mysteries. In 2020, a research vessel mapping the Atlantic floor discovered a graveyard of ships that shouldn't exist. Vessels that had supposedly been scrapped years earlier, or ones reported lost in completely different oceans. Among them was the Copenhagen, a 5-masted bark that vanished in 1928. Records show it had last been seen off Australia, 12,000 miles from where its wreck was found. These deepwater discoveries challenge our understanding of ocean currents and maritime navigation. Ships are appearing in places they couldn't possibly have reached. The US liner disappeared in 1990 near Argentina. Parts of its hull were found in 2019 off the coast of Norway, having somehow crossed both the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans without being spotted. Some cases remain stubbornly unsolvable. Despite advanced sonar mapping, underwater drones, and satellite tracking, hundreds of ships vanish each year. The empty vessels that drift back to shore offer only partial answers, carrying evidence of events that defy explanation. Each discovery seems to add another layer to the mystery rather than solving it. Maritime experts now acknowledge that our oceans hold secrets beyond current scientific understanding. As shipping technology advances, new types of ghost ships emerge. Vessels found with their GPS showing impossible positions, or their computers logging dates that don't match reality. These modern mysteries suggest that whatever forces create ghost ships aren't relics of the past. They're active phenomena that continue to claim vessels in ways we're only beginning to understand. If you love military history like I do, subscribe for more content like this.